Good night, everyone. Tonight, God is good and God is good all the time. My name is Irma J. Spears. I'm here to give you a little short news and a word on tonight. Okay, we're talking about Obamacare. Obamacare. Now, in 2010, when former President Obama had passed the ACA, Affordable Care Act, for Obamacare to help reduce the health care costs for families and ensure more people were able to access health insurance. Now, he required everyone to be qualified. Everyone. He wanted everyone to be qualified for this Obamacare. And it been helping many of people. So Obamacare is a term used to describe the affordable ACA. That this law was put into place to make it easy for people to purchase, health care insurance, so what they need. So Affordable Care Act made it, that health insurance company are required to provide certain levels of coverage with every plan. So Obamacare helped many families. It helped many families. Whatever plan that you want, it will provide the coverage that you need. So Obamacare, American history, because that was the first African American president that we had, and he came with Obamacare, healthcare, that helped so many people. So I have requested Obama, healthcare, remains, ACA Affordable Care Act, so for low income, working family, will have the plan that will suit your needs of your income. Wherever your income is, you'll be qualified for this health care. Now, we need Obamacare to stay around for many years to come, because it's a reminder of us, had a black African American, president, so, and it also, helped many families with their income, for low income working family, if for anyone that needed this health care plan, it all benefits your income, so I also have a word for you today. The blazing furnace. Now this is gonna come from Daniel chapter 3, 1 through 30. Now these is three guys. Really trust God. Trust God with everything, even in that burning furnace. So King, now he got a long name, so I'm gonna say King. He made an image of a gold, 60 cubit high and 6 cubit wide, and set it up on a plain of Jordan in the province of Babylon. So this is a king that made a big old tall image for his God, an image for his God, and he want everybody to bow down to this God that he created, that can't move, can't talk, and these three guys here love God. They love God, and they not they will not bow down, to any other gods. So in Babylon religion culture, statues that were frequently worshiping as God. So this king that hoped to use this huge image, 90 feet high, 9 feet tall. Why? As a part of his strategy to centralize, worship in order to unite the nation and solidify his power. So the gold statue may have been inspired by his dream, but when he made the statue, King had slowed that his devotion to Daniel God, was short lived. Now he neither feared nor obeyed God who was behind the dream. So Daniel, are devoted to Daniel. Now these three guys are devoted to Daniel. So they all, I'm going to tell you all about Daniel too. Daniel is devoted to God also. He prayed 3 times a day. And he going to throw him in a lion's den. And so they obeyed. They had a dream. They had a dream. They inspired by his dream. So when he made the statue, So the king had a dream, and Daniel had interpreted his dream. So he gonna come with his dream about this tall statue. Just that's where he got the idea from. So he then summoned the star scribe, perfect governor, advisor, treasury, judge, and amidst he got all these people and all other officers to come to dedication of the image that has set up. Now, he made this image. He made the big old 90 feet tall image, and he's setting up an event. And he want everybody to show up to come see this tall statue that he done made. So he want everybody to see it. Then he gonna want everybody to bow down, but they gonna have three guys, will not bow down. So he summoned all these people to come. So now the king arranged for the officer from his entire to gather for the dedication of his golden image. Now this king had pride of his golden image that he created of his own dream. He created it from his dream. So as with many state order, gathering with this was to emphasize the root of power and authority. So the subscribed perfect governor advised treasury judges, in the other officer assembly for the dedication of the image. So they all getting ready for it. So that king, had set up and they stood before it. He set it up and they all standing before it. Now the king has set an order for the gathering to stand and honor his image and set up, and they all stood before. But we gonna see who gonna bow down. So they all stood before. They all stood before this 90 feet tall image. So then Harold loudly proclaimed the nation and the people of every language that this is what you are commanded to do. So as soon as you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the lyres, the harp, the pipe, and all the kind of music, you must fall down and worship the image of gold that king has set up. Now, everybody that's standing around this image, when he make the music of all this sound, they're supposed to bow down in front of this image here. Now whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into the blaze of furnace. So if you don't bow down, then he gonna throw you in that furnace. And so now this is the image that he set up, that he give instructions, and when you hear the sound, you are to fall down. Worship this image, and if you don't, you will be thrown into the blazer. Therefore, as soon as they heard the sound, heard the sound in the horns, the flute, heard all the sounds, the nation and the people of every language fell down and worshiped the image of the gold that king had set up. Now, but you're gonna have some people gonna notice that three people did not bow down. So when they heard the sound, they fell down and they worshipped the image of gold. So at this time, some of them had came forward and denounced the Jews. Because the Jews, the three guys, that was the Jews, the Israelites. They love God. So God already told them, you don't bow down to no other God. So they sticking to their God, rules. So they had said to the king, may the king live forever. An order had issued a decree that everyone who hear the sound of the horn and sound must fall down and bow and worship this image of God. Saying that whoever does not fall down, worship will be thrown into the blaze of furnace. But there are some Jews who you have set over the affairs of providence, Babylon. Now who paid no attention? They ain't paying no attention. They only bow down to one God. And you talking about a big old tall statue that can't move, can't talk. So they said these three guys, the Jews, they're not paying no attention. They're not paying no attention at all. So they need to serve your God and worship, the image of gold that you had set up. So they wasn't paying no attention. They wasn't bowing down. They wasn't doing none of that because they only bow down to one God. So these three was a sign out of public example. Now the men The men could have bowed to the image, convincing themselves that the God knew their heart, but they had determined never to worship another God. And their courage that took that stand, and as a result, they were condemned and led away to be executed. Now, they had made, they was determined never to serve or worship in no other gods but their God. And so it's a result. They show example for them, and they're gonna crucify them because they serving only their God. So the men did not know whether they would be delivered from the fire, or they knew that they would not fall down and worship a false god. So they took a chance. They took a chance. But they had so much trust and so much faith in God. So they had so much faith in God. So no matter what high furnace that you had built over there, they had faith knowing that God was gonna come for their rescue. Because God said, don't bow down to no other gods. So that meant they weren't going to worship no other God. They had faith that God was going to come rescue them. So are you ready to stand for God no matter what? So when you do, you have to stand out. And that's how it is. You're going to get laughed at and everything. You're going to get mocked. You're going to get thrown in a furnace. You're going to get thrown in a pit. you know, all these things gonna happen. But if for some reason, all prophets have to go through this. Daniel had to go through the same thing. Just because he was reading 3 times a day. And see when they crucified you, the first thing they said, well, where you God at? You always reading that Bible and you going through stuff, where you God at? Joe lost everything. And his friends came, where you God at? That's the first thing they say, when you're going through something. The first thing they're going to say, what are your God? But see, our mighty God, he always come at the nick of time. At the nick of time, he will show up. You don't have to say where your God at. He always move on his divine time, and he always right on time. That's just like what I put out the other day. With Elijah. God had sent Elijah over there to that with her. She was collecting sticks for her last meal. But then God, you see when God have his prophets to go do this and do that, we still have the Spirit of God through us, to help people, And so when Elijah came there to help her, she had her last meal. And so that's how these guys is. They're talking about where your God at. Okay, our mighty God gonna show up. He gonna show up at the right of time. And so now the king is enraged. So he said, well, I'm gonna throw you on this high furnace. You mean tell me you gonna still stand up for your God? So now he mad. He mad because nobody paying him no attention at all. So he has some of the 3 men. He summoned them, So the king had asked them, did you not serve my God or worship the image of God? So now since these 3 men did not pay attention, so now he summoned them and asking them questions, questions like why you did not serve or worship my image of God. So the king expect them to fall down in front of his image. So instead of them bowing down, these 3 men replied to him, King, we do not need to defend ourselves, before you in this matter. So that's how these 3 guys talk to him, because it's like we're not gonna bow down to your God. We're not gonna bow down. So the king expect them to fall and bow down, but these guys, they was like, instead of them bowing down, these 3 men, they replied that the king, we do not need to defend ourselves. They said, we don't need to defend ourselves, because they know God fight your battle. We don't need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. So if we are thrown in a blaze of furnace, the God that we serve is about to deliver us from it. And he will deliver us from your hands. So they're like, okay, well, where your God at? Where your God? Don't worry about where he at. Worry about that he will show up. Now these guys have so much faith and so much trust in God. Even if you throw us in that fire, we still not gonna bow down to your God. And that's how bold they is. That's how much trust they have in God. So he said, if we are thrown in the blazing furnace, the God that we serve, will deliver us. And he meant that he got so much trust. He got so much trust. Now you about to get thrown in that blazer right there. But he got so much trust in God, knowing that God gonna show up. That God will show up. So but even if we does not, you know, we want you to know that this guy says something. We want you to know that we will not serve your God or worship the image of gold, that you have set up. Now he said, if he does not show up, we still not gonna bow down to your God. That's just how bold it is. They said, if our God don't show up, we still not bowing down to your God. So in other words, these three men was ordered to deny God. They would not deny God. So three men was ordered to deny God. So that's what this king was. He wanted them to deny their God. But they chose to be faithful to him no matter what happened. They were confident that God could deliver them. But they were determined to be faithful regardless of the consequences, even if the threat, saved God. So even if it threatened for the sake of our God, we still not going to bow down to your God, even if you throw us in that furnace. So these three guys are Jews, the Israelites. Their ancestors, they all grow up under God. So they meant, our God said we don't bow down to nobody else. We don't bow down to nobody else. And we have to remain faithful as these three men did. They cling to the hope that God will walk with you through the fire. And that's how it is. We have to have faith. I have faith. You got to have a strong faith. You have to believe that God gonna walk you through that storm. God gonna walk you through that fire. I've been through the fire and everything here. You gonna walk. You got to believe that God gonna walk with you through that fire. That God gonna walk you through that storm. That's how these three guys was. No matter what and how it looked. They believe that God gonna walk through that fire. God gonna walk through them through that storm. God gonna walk through that line then. That fire. They believe that God gonna save them. So now we see these three men. They have faith and confidence in God even in the fire of the storm. Even in the fire of the storm, they still had confidence. Confidence in God. So now after these three men had made this statement, the king was furious. He was mad with them. So now the king is angry. He ordered the furnace to be 7 times hotter. As usual, he commanded, some of the soldiers in his army, to tie him up first. And then throw them in a blaze of fire. So he really trying to crucify them, tying them out, put them in this fire. So these three men was bound in their coat, and their clothes, and their hats, and other garments, and they was cast into the midst of the burning furnace. So the king's command was so urgent, and the furnace was so hot that the flames of the fire killed his own soldiers. Now he want to put this furnace so hot for them, but his own people got killed just by standing next to the gate. So who took up the three men? Tied them up. And they fell into the blaze of fire. So he tried to get it to to hide for them, but his own people not fell in the blaze just by standing close to the blaze. And they got all burnt up. So now these are the three men that was tied up in the furnace, and it's real hot. So the king realized that he said, look, I see four men. Four men walking. Now, it was just three, right? It was just three men walking. He said, but I see four. I see four men, walking around in a fire, unbound, and unharmed, and the four look like a son of God. So they said one of them was Jesus, and the other three was the three men. So they're saying, they said, remember the guy was tied up. They said, I don't see nobody tied up. I see four people walking around. Didn't we just put three people up in there? I see four people walking around. So now there were three men bound, but now there's four men in a fire. It's Jesus, meaning God is with them in the meltdown of the fire. So his son Jesus. His son Jesus. And so there was in that furnace. There was in that fire. See that you be in your song, you in that fire, but when you come out of that storm, you coming out with no burns, no flames, no scars, no nothing. They in that furnace, walking around, not burned at all. So these three men was bound, but now they unbound. God was with them. God was with them, and that's what they kept on saying. God gonna walk with us through the fire. So the king approached the opening of the blazing furnace and shouted for the three men to come out. So now the king noticed that they are servants of the Most High God. And sometimes it takes God, to do a miracle. Sometimes it takes God to do a miracle for somebody to believe. Because he had to keep doing that with Jesus, And so now he said, okay, now I see you with the Most High God. And you had to throw him in the fire for you to find that out. So when they came out, they saw that the fire had not harmed their body. Nor was the hair on their head. The rolls was not burnt or messed up at all. So there was no smell of the fire on them at all. The clothes wasn't turned up. They had no burnt on them at all. So we see that these three men had said, if we get thrown into the furnace fire, God was going to save them. And we see that God saved them. Even if God don't, they still weren't going to bow down to them. So they know. They had so much faith in God. They had so much faith in God that God was going to save. And God did save them through the fire. God walked with them through that fire. The fire of stone. And we see that God came through. God came through. So now the king see with his own eyes. Now he said, praise be to God. Oh, now he want to praise God. He want to praise God. And so sometimes you got to show miracles sometimes. Sometimes God got to show power. That's why he had to do with with Pharaoh. Most kept saying, you need to let my people go. And God had to keep showing power. And so eventually he had to let them go. So they had trusted in him and defied the king command and were willing to give up their life. They were willing to give up their life, rather than serve and worship God except their own God. So they was ready. Well, not ready. They did. They give up their life, for the mighty God that they serve and who they believe and trust in. They was determined not to bow down to another God because they was being faithful to their God. And it came through, that God did came and saved them in that fire. God saved them in that fire. So they trusted in him, trusted in God, and to find the king command and were willing to give up their lives. Willing to give up their lives to keep from not bowing down to somebody else God. So these men was willing to give up their life for God because they refused to bow down to other gods. So we have to bow down to only God, and he the only one to save us, just like he did for these three men. So now the king see that there's no other God. can save you in this way. No one, there are only one in the true God. Nobody but this kind of God that can save you through any kind of storm. So now he said, praise be to God. So he praising God now. At first when he was talking about throwing that, he gonna tell them, well, where your God at? So the king see why these three men risked their lives, because they believe in a God that we serve. We believe in a God that we serve. The only God can save us through fire. The only God can save us through our trials and tribulations. Nobody else can. Who you can call? Who can call you and get you out that flame without him getting all burnt up too? You know, uh, so they see that these three guys, they see why they risk their life for the mighty God, because he's real. They don't want to buy down to something that's not real. Can't turn their head, can't talk. Our God is real. He can talk, tell you what to do, and everything else. So this king had this furnace so hot, that it killed some of his soldiers. So that no one cannot survive. But he see that these three men walking around in the fire. They walking around. Now the king see the miracle of God. So when they came, it was not burned. When they came out, it was not burned. They was not harmed. They didn't have no smell of fire on them at all. The king see the image, creation that cannot do what he just experienced. So now he see the king the God that he created cannot save them like our mighty God did. So the king promoted these three men. Now, he wanted to throw them in the furnace. And he stood up to them. That I'm not going to buy down to none of y'all. I'm not going to buy down. I buy down to only my God. Even if you throw me in that furnace, I'm still not going to buy down. So now these three guys stood up to him. This king promote these three men. They got a promotion, in a province of Babylon. So God came through and they were unharmed and saved and got a promotion. So everything had worked in their favor. By standing up to someone that wanted them to deny their God. And said that's what all about. And if your God said don't bow down to nothing else, don't bow down to nothing else, because it's gonna come a time that you're gonna need him to save you. So they risked their life. They know our mighty God that can save them. So this was a story of a king. He had a dream. And Daniel interpreted that dream. So in his dream, he wants to make an image of what he saw in his dream. And then he had an event when everybody's just saying over this again. And if you don't buy it down, you're gonna be thrown in this hot furnace. And so he want to know where they God at. So we see that our mighty God came through. We see these three guys. They have so much trust and so much faith in God. They was willing to give up their life. Willing to give up their life, believing that God gonna save them. And we see that God came through. God came through. They came out of that furnace. They once even smelling like smoke. They ain't had burnt or nothing on their clothes. So that was a real true God that we all wants to only bow down to. Bow down to. You can't bow down to nobody else. Nobody else cannot save you. Nobody else cannot save you. So this is the story on the three guys that had so much trust in God, even in the fire. They said God will walk with you through the fire. And we see that he did. He'll walk with you through the fire of the storm. So we did talk about Obama. Talking about removing Obamacare. And I have requested that Obamacare remain, because it helps so many people. This is a health care that helps so many families, low income and people that work, they have a plan that will fit your need of your income. You know, so just Obamacare, it helping so many families. So and so it's also Obamacare is American history. You know, so we want to keep the Affordable Care Act. You know, we want to keep it for it helping so many families. It helping so many families. You know, low income and working families. You know, so we need Obamacare to stay around for many, many years to come. You know, so that's all the news and words that I have for you tonight. Y'all have a blessed and safe night, and I'll see you on the next video.